It starts and I can hit pause. So now you can just hit that arrow button right here. And then if you want to, you can click this and it hides it. And there's your start. Just that button there. I can hit the screen so it's out of your way so you don't have to see that. And everything's up there.
I want to give it to you kind of an update. I think I had talked to you guys in June. My mom was in the hospital. She's supposed to have a surgery that's cool, but she was just last week. So I think I got that. So I don't foresee any issues. But if she does have not exactly sure. I actually am looking at my brain.
The 23rd is Thanksgiving, or the 3rd.
Yeah. So worst case scenario, I would try and fly it. It's the same. Try and fly it.
So as we get a little more closer to that, I'll figure out this one. And then the other thing is whatever but it's just
No, I went down to add. It's just
So I'm assuming that's going to enter my.
it sounds like that.
I don't know where it is.
No, there's no one of those things. Next time we play the last time we bring pieces and spot. Next time we just move around. I pay attention to this.
This is contract. Or if you take this and
Candy capsules. I don't know.
Just what it is.
Yes.
No, so basically it's only you use it right so that you get the nose on the side and get the actually select how file. So no way we do it. Okay. So the idea was that you was on this is they either type notes because it's just that one page, you just type notes or print and write notes.
Yeah, perfect.
Slide.
Get these name tags out, folks, if you don't have them already. See which one you choose.
Still no email. So I wrote it. The other way you can do this is if you have a professional email. Oh yeah. Just shoot it. It doesn't have to be. You just let me know because if you do another email, then just let me know personally. Because I had some guys who were sitting there and she did this. They said no, send it. But if you're having an issue with that, just send me another email.
Yeah.
Random address log. I'll add that to my roster.
Okay, just go with it. But easier. I don't know.
Check the junk mail.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Okay. Very similar to that.
So I'll probably I'll do firehouse and then I'll just week that I'm in, I'll attend to the 11 if we need to change it. Yeah, no worries.
But then I went back and emailed me and said that he gave my didn't see my name come up and then I looked on there. So mine, when I log in, always pops up. But it's because I look through Internet Explorer, Firefox, or other ones like that. I haven't logged in. I don't know.
You make an account on TEDx, and it's just showing me the lesson.
Yes, so yeah, you have to go into the first one. We'll tell you how to do it. Technically, technically, if you like, you just register. You just go and register.
Yeah.
And you're logged in, you just go right in. The second one is practice. So I know that you know how to watch it, how to take the quiz. So if you knows anything about you'll see on my videos, I give you the wrong answer. So it's IHS.G or IHS. I'm sorry, logged. IHS.G.
Somebody moved my stuff.
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna find you guys and figure out where you wanted them, but.
Does everyone know that there's free Wi-Fi here? Okay.
Just
And
the
you guys
open
are getting
network?
logged in. What's that?
Just the open network?
No. It's you have to look. It's not. If you search for it, you won't find it. You have to type in under other INHS -guest to find it, and there's no password. But you can't see it just because you're in the area. You have to actually put it in. Nope. Yeah, that .gu is the one. Yep.
Yeah,
It showed up on ours.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Perfect. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. About where
You're good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you back again. I had fears on Monday afternoon that maybe we should head up again today. That's 3 years. Thanks for coming back. It's going to be a good morning. So, a couple housekeeping type things. There's your sign-in roster. Get your shirt size on there onto the far side here. But we're going to start ordering shirts for you in the very near future. So sign in and that. The other thing is that based on the information that you gave me the other day, I updated your contact list, so please go back to it again one more time, make sure that I got it right. If not, correct it one more time, and we'll get there eventually. All right, so Monday afternoon, we left you with a bunch of stuff, yes? Okay. So out of that, tell me about Dropbox. Any issues in terms of getting to Dropbox? And Alice, we talked this morning, so you're going to go? Okay. Anybody else?
I never got the email.
You never got full Dropbox?
No, but I
And
just
it might have been that, so I will change the email and get it to Michelle today. I'll call during
So
lunch or she
what we
get it to
probably
you.
need to do is we probably need to create a PowerPoint out for him for this morning.
Do you need PowerPoints?
that's okay. I read through.
Would you like them?
No, it's okay.
It's up to you. If that changes your mind, then I will get them up for you. So,
If that thing needs to do it.
No, that's all right.
but we'll get it to you. We'll get you the access today.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All good.
So, FizDev. So let me tell you about FizDev. Michelle had promised you an email the other day that's going to expand on what you can do with FizDev. She hasn't received that from FizDev yet. She told me to do that this morning, so you probably will see an email from her today that will allow you to get in there and start messing around with that. Migrating. So 22 out of 24 of you kind of migrated. Exactly. Well done. Any problems with you, those of you that have gotten in terms of navigating around?
Didn't have a whole lot of time to really explore through it, but
Yeah.
some of the stuff I was trying to look for was sort of fine. So I don't know if that's my
So part of it's going to be just getting used to it. Part of it come to me, and I'll be glad to get you around to where you need to be.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Right.
Anybody else migrating?
I noticed in my Brady it had like study plans.
Yeah.
Is that
That's them.
okay?
So there's several default things in my grading. One of them is the study plan. Another one is that there are some tests that you can take in there. I don't grade them.
Okay.
I don't really care about them a whole lot. But the idea that if you want to go in as an extra credit type thing for yourself, not for me, for yourself, you can certainly do that. But not gradable.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So the extra credit is on there as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And the ones I printed out is just the 5 points then for that first week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That will be.
And I looked at the student policy and I didn't find any breakdown of how much scores are worth, just percentages. Okay.
I'll take a look. I think it's under the tests, or I think it's under, yeah, I think it's under tests policy. So I'll take a look at that. Yeah. Anything else in my grading? So more than anything else, folks, get in there and start playing around with it, get used to it, as to where everything is at, and then by the time that we go with full week, then life will be good. TED Ed. Issues with TED Ed. What issues do you have?
I wasn't able to register, it just didn't give me a prompt to actually go and register. The website was working, but not.
So any issues with that, come see me during a break.
I have that same issue, so I just went to the TED Ed website and registered, but my fear was when you send us stuff, if it will trigger that. I actually looked at it.
I have the same issue.
Okay, so both of you, and I've heard a couple different people have, emailed me even and said, I didn't show up on there, but it showed up on my end. So yours popped up, yours popped up, yours popped up. So it did come up on there. So, but I will send one other thing too, and just make sure everyone's all set too.
Just like amongst many of the websites that we've been having to go through, my computer has told me, I'm like, just check your pop-up blocker. That might be a thing for everybody. I don't know if everyone's computers tell them about that, but it might tell me that if I didn't change the pop-up blocker, I may not be able to get to all the cards or register for certain things. So I don't know if that could be an issue.
Any other issues with TED Ed or anything like that? If you have a question, come see me at one of the breaks.
We good? Any questions from the stuff we talked about on Monday? Okay, digested it here and in your gut and everything else. Anything else that comes to mind?
Monday was the hardest day, right?
Found that. You're the guy that's telling me the drug profiles are going to be easy, so absolutely Monday.
And for shirt sizes, I only have a large. But if you want to just worried about what the shirt size is like, this is a large. This is the polo shirt, basically this is going to be designed, you can wear it class if you want to, but you'll get a couple of these. These are designed for your clinical schedules. And then for those of you not with City Fire or a certain agency, you will wear these. City Fire, they make you guys your own special shirts. So you guys will get, they pay for them here. You can wear these on shift, but I guess if you're on shift working for there, you guys don't want to be worn as this. It's got to be a duty thing. So it says, you have to be identified as paramedic student. So these ones will be for clinical and preceptor ride time. Again, I got 2 larges if you guys want to try them on just to make sure what size would be. Unfortunately, I only have large. And they'll be in here. I probably can find some other sizes if you need another size, I'm pretty sure.
Hey, Doug.
Yes. Mouse. Have you seen it come back? There it is. So right there.
And then to pause it again as well.
Right there.
Oh, you hit that again.
So hit there, and there, and there, pause. So.
All right, folks, let's play. So if your name tags are not out yet, get them out. Let me tell you my story. My tale of woe this morning. About 3 a.m. this morning, there I was, I was asleep, thinking about you all, wondering what was going to happen today. And I started running your faces and your names in my mind. I got about half of you down, so there's another half to go yet. But here's the thing. As I ran it down, I ran when we were sitting on Monday. So the fact that you're already changing seats, you're not okay? But to that, it will be a work in progress in terms of getting you down. Thank you. In terms of getting you down, and continue to work on that. All right, so let's go. We are starting with chapter 1 in your A&P book, and we are talking about an introduction to A&P. So as I told you on Monday, the way they'll operate is I'll ask you to tell me something about the chapter. What did you take away from that? Nice and loud, gotta be loud.
That's what that defines anatomy and physiology.
Okay.
And pedal,
Okay.
physiology.
Okay. Come on.
And what in depth about negative feedback and why it's not related to.
Yeah, so the bottom line about negative and positive feedback is what? What's the bottom line about it?
To maintain homeostasis.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about homeostasis. We're going to talk about the fact that we can sustain life because of negative and positive feedback. Okay. What else? Yeah. So we'll get there. We'll start talking about the fact that that the right hand can't operate without the left hand. I guess it can, but probably not that. That the respiratory system is somehow connected to the heart. That the hip bone is somehow connected to the femur bone, and it goes on and on in terms of that organ systems work together. Good. What else? I don't mind long pauses, really. Okay, I'm good at it.
Anatomical terms.
What about it?
The use of underwood.
So check this out. Do you know, as a career, EMT, that you've done a lousy job jumping? I'll point that. That as a career, you do a lousy job in terms of defining left and right and up and down and like so. That stops in here. The new language is what we're talking about today. So in terms of documentation, in terms of communication, in terms of sounding intelligent for what you're doing, that's part of why we're talking about what we're talking about today. Anything else in that first chapter? Kind of down and dirty, right? Oh yeah, now you're not going to work. So we've got some recording going on. I think probably that interfered with moving slides forward. Give me just a second.
So.
I'll try. Take it. Sorry.
All right, so this is where we're going. This kind of little map of the next hour or so. By the way, haven't quite gotten there yet. Cell phone, get on the vibrate, right? I do not expect to see faces down in terms of looking at cell phones while you're in lecture, for me or for otherwise. Okay? Fair enough? All right, so here's where we're going. We're going to talk a little bit about the basic functions of living organisms. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between anatomy and physiology. You already told me about that. We're going to talk a little bit in terms of major levels of organization in living organisms. That is from the cell on upward to the organ system. We're going to talk about the organ systems of the human body and the major components of each system. We're not going to camp there. We're just touching on it. And between today and into Monday and Tuesday of next week, you're going to touch on a number of those different organ systems. We're going to talk about homeostasis and why it matters to you. And we're going to talk just a wee bit about language of anatomy. So an organism, as you should know, is a sum of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems of a living being. The idea that it builds on each other, it's a scaffold on top of each other, is what we're talking about here in terms of organs. Some basic functions of living organisms include responsiveness. So changing and adapting to our environment. Can you give me an example of that? Changing and adapting to a living environment. Go ahead. Good. Good. Hold on. Keep going. Somebody else.
Thermal regulation.
So thermal regulation, again, that's in your book. That's what we'll talk about today as one of our examples. The idea that when it's cold, we shiver to warm up again. The idea when it's hot, we sweat to get rid of the heat is a good example of how we change. But that's just one of many, 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 many changes along the way, right? Frequently. Growth. Organisms increase in size through the growth of a cell. As humans, we have 100 trillion cells in our bodies. And the idea that they're always reproducing is the other thing that goes along with this. So the term for that growth is differentiation. And so the idea that cells are specific in nature, where they go and what they do, is part of that differentiation. So more basic functions would include movement, to include internal and external. So an example of internal would be our digestive system. The fact that from mouth to anus, there's something that's continually moving as far as digestion of food. External would be us walking, sitting, lying. Metabolism then is organisms need energy in order to function. That's nice. That sounds good. But tell me more about that. Where does that energy come from? Food, good. I'll buy that. But there's something else.
Absorption.
Great. Take that.
Or like a cellular diffusion.
Okay, good. Now we're getting there. And so, specifically, what is the cellular portion that provides energy? ATP, right? So ATP is the source in terms of moving everything else along the way. When somebody's in cardiac arrest, they have a bunch of ATP sitting around. I'm just not going to play today. It doesn't quite work that way, right? The idea in terms of ATP is part of energy. The idea in terms of glucose, you and I absorbing food, taking in food, provides that glucose, that provides ATP, that provides this right here. Metabolism then refers to some of all the processes needed for growth and repair during physiological processes, to include respiration, digestion, and excretion. So let's talk a little bit about the sciences of A&P. You told me that anatomy is what again? So when we talk about anatomy, we're talking about the heart, right? We're talking about where everything is located. Versus physiology is what? So when we talk about pathophysiology, what are we talking about? The study of, right? The study of how the body works. So check this out. You've got these brainiacs that have told us about the way the body functions. And did you know that what they know and what we know about the human body is yet an ongoing type thing as far as how the body works? Plenty of places in the body, they still have an understanding as to why we do or how we do what we're doing. To give you an example of that, today we're going to talk about the pancreas. We're going to talk about the endocrine system. Endocrine system being alpha and beta cells. There's something that's called somatic cells that's located in the pancreas. They don't really understand that's what it does, the function of it. We'll talk about that a little bit later on this morning. Just to give you an example. Anatomy is divided into gross or microscopic, which is exactly the way it sounds. So gross is that if you look at the human body, you can identify certain things, right? Microscopic is exactly the way it is. Gross anatomy is everything to the naked eye, to include surface anatomy. So the idea that our ear, our nose, our fingers, our skin, and goes on and on. Regional anatomy is something that is specific to an area, as in the lungs. As in, we're talking about thorax to include the lungs and the heart, right? Systemic anatomy is about major organ systems. That is, if we're talking about the heart, you'll be talking on Monday about the heart. You'll be talking about blood. You'll be talking about blood vessels. That's part of the system that works together all by itself. Microscopic is broken down into cytology and histology. What's the difference? That's mouth. So you're right. So as you go into a lab, you go into any lab in the United States, you're going to see departments for cytology. You're going to see departments for histology. When they do a biopsy, what are they looking at? Histology primarily, although they look at cytology as well in terms of certain things about them. Talk about human physiology. Cell physiology is chemical or molecular, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk then about specific organs. We're talking about organ systems. We're going to talk about the effects of disease on organs or the system. Okay, so tell me about disease on organ or organ systems. Where do you want to learn?
One can affect different organs or organ systems in different ways based on their cells.
Excellent. Give me an example of that. You're spot on. Give me an example of that.
So diabetes can affect your kidneys in one way, or your lymphatic system another way.
So diabetes is the best example because diabetes affects all organ systems, everything about it. And we're going to talk about that as for your time here. All right, so levels of organization starts at the cellular level or chemical level. Chemical or molecular level, atoms combined to form molecules. Molecular shape determines the function of it. Cellular level then is the smallest living units in the body. Molecules interact to form intracellular structure. So check this out. How long do red blood cells last for? What would you like to say? 120 days, okay? Except if you happen to have sickle cell disease, then how long does it last for? Weeks. Weeks. So the thing about it is, depending on the disease process, will be a large part in terms of the cells and how well the cells work and how they function. So the idea that in a perfect world, we have that 100 trillion cells around our body, blood cells I should say, that last for 120 days. The idea that carry oxygen on the way. When you have a disease process along the way, such as cancer would be another example, then it's going to have an interference in terms of how well the body functions. Make sense? When we're talking about tissue level, groups of similar cells working together to perform a specific function. the good example, not the only one, but good example is cardiac muscle. You have potassium, you have sodium potassium pump that you're going to learn about starting on Monday. But you're going to learn about that, you're going to dive into that when we get into cardiology. The example of that is without those cells doing their thing, that our patient's going to be in cardiac arrest. Magnesium is another one that's very specific to the heart. Calcium is another one very specific to the heart in terms of how it works. So then, an organ level is 2 or more different tissues working together to perform specific functions. So the heart being an example of that, and the circulatory system being a part of that, and the blood being a part of that. Organ system level then is interaction of organs for a specific function. And again, the heart, the vessels, and the blood. When we're talking about organism, we're talking about all organ systems working together to maintain life and health. This is where homeostasis starts. Highest level of organization, the idea that when an organ system shuts down, i.e. kidney shut down, renal failure along the way, it's going to have a greater effect on the rest of the body along the way. Yeah? Okay, any questions? So, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to just touch on these. We're actually going to fly through them fairly quickly because there's a fair number that you're going to get to today and Monday and Tuesday. So we're not going to hang out here. So we talk about integumentary system. We're talking about skin. So the functions of it, according to the slide anyways, it's thermoregulation, protection, sensory reception, and excretion. Doesn't do anything else.
Isn't it a system, skeletal system with bone structure?
Yeah, as a big example of that. So back to this for just a second. The idea then is that when we have an 88-year-old lady that's been down on the ground for 7 hours, and she's got a history of diabetes, and she's got a skin tear on her back, on her buttocks. She got a problem? What's the problem?
Infection.
So necrosis is a possibility, infection is a possibility. Keep going, you're not there yet. She's cold, she ends up being hypothermic along the way, okay? As in severely hypothermic, as in 93, 94 degrees. And oh, by the way, the 93, 94 degrees can develop into hyperkalemia. Simple things in terms of skin. Yeah.
How is diabetes linked to that hypothermic?
It's not directly, it's indirectly in that there's poor circulation on the skin side with diabetes. And so it's the vessels. And any time that you have issues with the vessels, then you're going to have issues in terms of how well both the skin can function and the vessel can function. Okay, so it's indirect. It offers protection. It offers sensory reception, both to pain and pleasure. And finally, it offers excretion. How does it offer excretion? Sweat, right? And so a huge function of it is that it's going to sweat, especially in the summertime. Skeletal system. You're going to get this from Doug next Tuesday. It offers support, protection, primary site for red blood cells and white blood cell protection, and thermoregulation. One more time. Where does it offer primary site for red blood cells and white blood cells protection? In the bone marrow, right? And so is there another system that's part of that in terms of how that works? As a matter of fact, yes. Renal system, we're going to talk about the kidneys today. We're going to talk about the fact that the kidneys are linked to this in terms of production of red blood cells. Muscular system, you're also going to get next Tuesday. Offers skeletal movement, thermoregulation, and support. Do you think with all these systems offering thermoregulation, that's kind of a big deal? Yeah, so when we talk about negative feedback in just a couple minutes here, it offers, the systems offer it all together. Nervous system controls the center for functions of the body. Where are those organs located? you're right, everywhere, but primarily we're talking about the brain and the spinal column, and then peripheral nervous system from there. Yes? Okay. Endocrine system, we'll be talking about this morning. Endocrine system is what? I'm sorry, one more time? Hormones. Okay, good. So that's one function of it. Okay? It's primarily hormones, but it has a second function. As we get it this morning, we're going to be talking about that second function as well. Cardiovascular system, the big boy, if you will, provides mechanical conduction function, moves blood around the body. Vascular system, again, all three that you're going to get on with. Lymphatic system, we're not going to be talking about, but what is it? What's the lymph system? I'm sorry? Immune system, okay. What does it do? You're right. What does it do? It filters it. So I think of it as being like a garbage dump. So lymph all over the body is a garbage dumpster in terms of taking white blood cells and flushing them from the system. So check this out. Lymph system, where are they located? All over the body, right? So common areas is right here, 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 right near the hips, down to the legs as well. Okay? So when somebody ends up with cancer, let's say somebody ends up with cancer in the lungs, do you suppose the lymphatic system is going to get affected by that? In a huge way. It's overwhelmed. It can't do its thing just because of all the stuff that's going on along the way. It's the same thing if somebody has a poor immune system. It's going to have issues in terms of how well the lymphatic system can control that. Respiratory system, we're going to be talking about today. Warms and humidifies air and movement of air. The respiratory system, filtering of particles and gas exchange. So digestive system, we will not be talking about, at least today, but it secretes bio and digestive enzymes, moves food and liquids throughout the system, from the mouth to the anus, and over a period of time, it's going to break that down. Urinary system, renal system, we will be talking about today. Removal of urine, regulation of blood pressure, acid-base balance, endocrine function, just to name a few. So let's go long, very deep on what's in the system today. Remarkable. My favorite organ, even more so than the heart. My favorite organ is the renal system. For all the stuff that we'll be talking about today. Pretty cool stuff. I think so. Reproduction for both male and female. The idea that certain hormones, and largely we're talking about hormones for the female, hormones for the male. The idea that it's very specific in terms of what they do and where they go and everything else like that. So as we talk about hormones today, endocrine system, we're talking about a lock and a key. It has a certain receptor as to where it goes, but it has to open in terms of lock. Okay, so you've already kind of told me, but one more time. Homeostasis is what?
Regulation of body's needs.
How does it do that?
Endocrine positive and
Negative and positive feedback is one way. That's not the only, it's not exclusive to that. Keep going. All the organ systems play a part in terms of homeostasis. Every single organ in the body plays a part in terms of homeostasis. Second by second, not minute by minute, but second by second. So what happens then is, why do we have patients that go into cardiac arrest? I know that's a stupid question, but help me out. Why do we have patients go into cardiac arrest if homeostasis is always in charge? So homeostasis can tip to one edge or another, right? We're going to talk about acid-base balance in about 3 weeks. I'm sorry, but we'll talk about acid-base balance in about 3 weeks or so. And one of the things we're going to talk about is that when that teeter-totter with acid-base balance, we have too much acid, we have too much base, is off whack, then that's when we end up in terms of significant problems. Bleeding out would be an example of that. Cardiac arrest would be an example of that. So as we talk about homeostasis, it's a tipping. I always think about it as being a teeter-totter that tips one way or the other. Homeostasis is the existence of a stable internal environment. All right, so check this out. Write it down, and then we'll talk. Good. I'm happy for you. All right, so different parts of the feedback loop, both the negative side and the positive side. So homeostasis regulation involves the stimulus, action that evokes response. Give me an example of that. A cut, and then bottom. Cut. And we'll get into positive feedback as a result of that, because you're spot on with that, okay? So something that goes on in terms of, say, you do something about it, either negative side or positive side. The receptor is a sensory organ, sensitive to environmental stimulus, okay? So for the example that you gave, the idea in terms of the clotting system that's going to start to take effect because of what's going on with this. The control center is generally what? Brain, right? Brain or nervous system, but primarily the brain, receives and processes information from the receptor. The effector then is the muscle. The effector is something that's going to do something about it. Organ that acts in response. Responds to control center commands, opposes or reinforces the stimulus. Okay? So an example. Your patient is breathing at about 4 times a minute. Message to the brain. Hey, brain, we're lying down here. What does the brain do out of that? Sends a message to the respiratory system, to the cardiac system, to the kidneys. Hey, you need to pick up the pace here. And so the idea that it goes on and on and on. So is negative feedback only on one side versus the other? Is negative feedback always going to be slow it down? It can be speeded up too, right? Fight and flight. Feed and breathe. So the idea in terms of negative feedback, or the idea in terms of feedback is it's almost like a figure 8. It can go back and forth and back and forth. Walking here this morning, well before you all, and it was cold in this room. I'll guarantee you that within a matter of minutes that I had goosebumps on my arms. I'll guarantee you that I was shivering this morning when I first walked into this room. But 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, it just we look warmer because you all buckled about it. Thank you very much. So the idea in terms of negative feedback will always swing back and forth and back and forth. But what remains the same is always this. This doesn't change. The function of it doesn't change. It's just where the organs are at and the stimulus is being met. That makes sense. All right, so negative feedback, we've been talking about it. So the effector opposes the original stimuli. The effector opposes the original stimuli. There's a variation then outside the normal limits that triggers automatic response to correct the situation. So the example they give here, the example that we're going to see in the video here in just a second, is about thermoregulation. So let's see. Variation outside the normal limits. Our body temperature is normally 98.6. It's a set one, right? So the idea in terms of when our body temperature falls outside of that, message to the brain, hey, you need to warm up in here. We're going to the cold side. And so the muscle goes into that. The muscle is about the skin. The muscle is about the vessels in terms of warming the body up. Make sense? So the idea in terms of that continuing on and continuing on and continuing on until we get back to that set point. It's the same thing with heart rate. It's the same thing with respiratory rate. It's the same thing with every function that we have in our body. Exactly the same way. So again, same with thermoregulation. Control center is the brain. Receptors are the brain and the skin. The effectors are the blood vessels and the sweat glands. To maintain a normal range, it's got a set value within a specific thing. Most homeostasis mechanisms involve negative feedback. Let me say that again. Most mechanisms involve negative feedback that regulates. Now, positive will kick in, but positive is typically towards what? When will positive feedback show up and do its thing? To what Trevor talked about. Bleeding, right? So bleeding or some sort of a crisis that's going on, positive feedback will go in and try to correct whatever the problem is along the way. Make sense? So give me an example of positive outside of bleeding. What they got up here is bleeding. So give me something else. One that you may not get a human thought on. childbirth. Childbirth. Baby's coming down from the uterus into the cervix, into the vagina, and message goes out to the brain. We need more contractions here. Sends a message in terms of hormones so that oxytocin is released. Oxytocin then will create the contraction, and the contraction will continue until baby is delivered. Here's an example of positive feedback. Okay? Does that positive feedback last forever? No. Baby's delivered, placenta is delivered, oxytocin is stopped at that point. It's the same thing with bleeding in terms of product system. Product cascade kicks in, the restriction that kicks in does its thing in terms of the negative feedback or positive feedback. What's another example? Another thing that I was thinking about this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep. What's another example of positive feedback? How do you mean?
As far as like blood pressure, hypertension,
Okay.
vasoconstriction.
Okay. Okay. It can do that. It can. Typically, though, blood pressure is going to be about negative feedback that's going to issue it. So, one more crisis. What happens when we have an allergic reaction? Anaphylaxis. What's released? Histamine. So, histamine through the mast cells that we're talking about tonight. So, the mast cells will kick in and kick in and kick in. The histamine goes into like outer space, right? Will the histamine continue doing its thing? Yeah, until it can no longer do its thing, or it's corrected the problem. It's taking care of the antigen, kicking around the body, and life is good again. Right? Well, what happens when there's too much histamine in the body? They swell, they die. But you come along, and you're the hero. Okay? What do you give that patient? Epinephrine and Benadryl. Okay? So the idea that you're going to actually block that positive feedback because of something that you need to do with your patient is an example of you stepping in and doing something about that positive feedback, that overdraft. Make sense? So the idea that positive feedback is typically a crisis type thing, positive feedback is typically very much less than the negative feedback.
So question on that. So isn't positive essentially like a negative with a wider scope?
Yep.
Something still stops it?
Yep. Eventually, yes. Yep.
To what degree are hypo and hyperglycemia positive and or negative?
So typically, hypoglycemia is going to be on the negative feedback side. That is, the body will start kicking in, trying to kick off glycogen, or on the flip side of that, trying to kick off insulin to try to correct whatever the problem is going away. Okay, so it's considered to be more on the negative feedback than the positive. All right, so this is an example of what we talked about. On the left-hand side is that when we have a body temperature that rises above 37.2 or 99 degrees. On the right-hand side, we're talking about somebody that's hypothermic, okay? So let's go on the right-hand side first and check it out. So the body temperature falls below 37.2 degrees, which means that we're going to send a message to the receptor. The receptor is going to say, hey, the sensors here is indicating that we have a problem from the body temperature. The receptor is going to send a message to the control center, the brain. The brain's going to say, hey, skin, hey, vessels, hey, blood, you need to do something in terms of warming this dude up. And so it continues on in terms of this entire thing. So that what the effector is going to do with that is exactly what I just got finished talking about. And this goes on and on and on until what? It comes back into a range. Not exactly, it's not going to be 98.6, but it's going to be within a range that's acceptable to the body. Make sense? So on the left-hand side, it's just the opposite then. That we have a fever, or that we have a body temperature that's too high, it's going to do the same thing. The difference is that's going to open up vessels. That's what we're going to start sweating until the stimulus is removed. Make sense? So when we talk about heat stroke, when we talk about somebody on cocaine with a body temperature of 105.6, this is the feedback that's getting in. Make sense? Positive feedback, the initial stimulus produces response that reinforces the stimulus, i.e., there's an issue in terms of crisis. Positive feedback loop regulation, a potentially dangerous process that requires a quick completion. So, to what Trevor was just talking about, there's a break in the blood vessel wall that causes bleeding. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be, but it doesn't have to be anything major. So the idea that this morning you're standing in the shower and shaving, the idea that you cut yourself, this is already starting to take place in terms of this. So on the far side of that, the idea that you end up taking the chainsaw to your femur and you're bleeding out is exactly the same feedback. It doesn't matter. The idea that the body's going to respond to whatever the crisis is along the way in terms of trying to fix it. And so it goes from a break in the blood vessel to damaged cells releasing chemicals. And there's all kinds of chemicals that we're going to be talking about as we get into trauma. We'll talk about this a little bit deeper. So the clotting process, very, very complicated clotting process begins in terms of trying to take care of victims. If it doesn't, then additional chemicals are released. Okay, what happens when you step into this? Okay, for example, let's go back to the chainsaw that cut themselves in the feet. What are you going to do in terms of trying to reverse this feedback right here? We're going to tourniquet it. We're going to stop the bleeding. We're going to give IV fluids. We're going to transport him to a surgeon. Make sense? So the idea in terms of you stepping into this positive feedback is that you're trying to break whatever the cycle is along the way. And the body will continue doing its thing until it no longer can do its thing. So the idea, same guy, cuts himself in the femur with a chainsaw. He's laying there bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. The body will continue doing its thing until, guess what? There is no more heart rate. There is no more respiratory rate. That it will continue trying to compensate along the way. Homeostasis at its best. All right, so check this out. This is about 9 minutes long, I do believe. So let's see if we can pull this up. That's assuming I can find it now, okay? So remember the other day I was telling you about technical glitches? I rest my case.
Put the mouse on our screen.
Take a look.
Maria is always on the go, taking over 7,000 steps each day, and she does it.
Hi, it's Mr. Anderson, and today I'm going to go a little bit deeper into feedback loops and talk about the elements of a feedback loop. You hopefully know that.
All right, hang on. So we've got a bunch of taping that we're starting to do with your class, and this is all tied in together. So this is part of the reason why we're struggling at the moment.
The difference between negative and positive feedback loops, and you can look.
Let me grab that and press it.
course video.
That's one.
That's it.
So then we could just do this real quick. Settings. Settings. Well, there's two ways to do this. One, you could do.
It was embedded into the PowerPoint, but it doesn't show up that way.
It's weird that it's not. There's these.
So I've got a bunch of other videos that are going on. Some great ones to take a look at. More pages. So, actually, yeah, 12 minutes.
Hi, it's Mr. Anderson, and today I'm going to go a little bit deeper into feedback loops and talk about the elements of a feedback loop. You hopefully know the difference between negative and positive feedback loops, and you can list a few like thermoregulation, blood glucose, we'll add blood calcium as we go throughout the year, and there's a number of feedback loops that control both inside of us and the outside of us. But I want to talk about the elements, the important elements of a feedback loop, so you're comfortable with it. And so if we think of us as a system, we're constantly getting input, we're constantly giving output, but that's not a feedback loop. A feedback loop doesn't really exist until we take that output and that actually feedbacks into the system. And so until we have a loop, then we really don't have a feedback loop. So what we're looking for are loops. Now the terms should also be familiar with. In other words, you should understand what a receptor is and what an effector is, what a stimulus is and what a response is. If you've looked at any of the feedback loops in our book, you'll start to realize that they have a similar pattern. In other words, the receptor is always going to be in the middle, and then you're going to kind of have a figure eight like this. We're going to have a figure eight. What happens if it goes up too high? What happens if it goes too low? And so the receptor will always sit in the middle, and then the effector is going to sit at the top, and the other effector is going to sit at the bottom. So if we look at these definitions, receptor and effector, they're organs, and so those are things, physical things. So the receptors and the effectors are going to be at the top and the bottom of this figure eight. And then these are actions, and so the stimulus and the response, and the stimulus and the response, scenarios like this, those are going to be actions on either side. In other words, what it does, or what it sends, or what it does. And so those are the elements of the feedback loop. And so not only should you know negative, positive, but you should be able to say what's the receptor, what's the effector, what's it doing, how's it working. And so let's try that with a little bit of practice. And so the example I gave you as far as feedback loops go is one of these speed signs. And so when you see a speed sign, then if you're going too fast, you may slow down. If you're going too slow, you may speed up. And so let's define some of the receptor and the effector. And so let's do our little color here. And so I'm going to put a receptor in the middle. Now, I can do a couple of feedback loops, but let's just deal with them first. And so what's the receptor? Let's say the receptor is going to be your eye. It's going to be in the middle. What is an effector? Let's say a foot at the top, and let's say your foot down here below. So if I say those are the organs, so we're going to put an eye, foot, and a foot at the bottom. So this is going to be my receptor, and this is going to be my effector on either side. And so if we talk about specifically what the stimulus is, well, let's say the stimulus is that you're going, I don't know, we'll say 38 miles an hour. What's going to be your response? Your response is going to be slow down. Let's say that you're all of a sudden going 22 miles an hour. So that's going to be the stimulus. What's going to be the response? You're going to speed up. And so that'll feed back to the eye. And so what we're going to have is this feedback loop that's constantly going up here, and then down here, and then up here. But it's kind of keeping you close to that set point, that speed that we want it to be. And so we have a negative feedback, and it's kind of keeping that little center point. The example that your book constantly talks about, or all science books talk about, is a thermostat. It's a great example. And so if we talk about how a thermostat keeps a room warm, well, the thermostat, so what are the nouns, what are the organs in this case? The thermostat is going to be the receptor, so we're going to put that right in the middle. we're going to have a furnace, which is going to be an effector, and then we have another furnace up here. So let's say that the temperature goes too high. So if the temperature goes too high, what is the furnace going to do? The furnace is going to turn on. Let's say the temperature goes too low, so that's an action, or our stimulus. What's our response going to be? Then it's going to turn on. And so those are just analogies, ways that you can understand how a feedback loop works. But remember, we're going to put the receptors and the effector at the top, the bottom, and the right in the middle. And so that keeps us close to a set point. Now let's try to do some real ones in biology. So let's try and do thermoregulation. So thermoregulation. So we've got rid of their definitions over here. We're going to put the receptor in the middle. So the receptor, in this case, is called the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is going to be an organ. It's actually it's a little bottom part of the brain that drips down from the brain. The lower portion of the brain is connected to the pituitary. But the hypothalamus is going to sense your temperature, so it's an organ. And so let's start with the receptor right here in the middle. And you may want to start with the temperature. Okay, so let's say that we get too hot. So let's say that our stimulus is that the hypothalamus is getting too hot. What are some effectors that we could put at the top? Well, one example would be like sweat glands. What's another one? Capillaries. Like that. My handwriting is not great. So let's say the temperature goes too high. Our organs at the top could be sweat glands, capillaries. So if it goes too hot, what are the sweat glands going to do? What's their response? Well, they're going to sweat. And that, through evaporative cooling, is going to lower our temperature. What are the capillaries going to do? If they get too hot, then they're going to dilate. So there's more blood going by the surface of your body. And so that's going to release more heat. And so that's going to lower temperature as well. And so our response is going to depend on what the effector is. Let's say that our temperature goes too low. What are some things that are down here? Well, capillaries again. So if capillaries before were dilating when you get too cold, then they're going to constrict. And so what that's going to do is hold more of your temperature close to the body. What's another one? Your muscles, for example. Our muscles could eventually start to shiver, and that's going to generate a little bit of heat. We could have goosebumps, where it holds our hair up on end, which doesn't really do much if you don't have a lot of hair. It's not like a dog, but it does kind of pull your skin in tight, like a coat pulling in tight. And so this is our characteristic feedback loop, where if it goes too high, we do these things. If it goes too low, we do these things. And so that keeps our body temperature near that set point right now. Another example is blood glucose. So blood glucose, if we think about that, we should maybe set up the organs first. And so what would the organ be in the middle? Well, the organ's going to be the pancreas. So the pancreas, let's put that right in the middle. What are we going to have if our blood glucose goes too high? Well, to remember, the way I always do it is that we've got beta cells at the top and alpha cells at the bottom. Now, what are those? Well, inside the pancreas, if we say the pancreas doesn't look anything like that, but the beta cells are going to be speckled over the surface of the pancreas. The parts of what are called the islets of the Langerhans, and then we're going to have alpha cells as well speckled around here. So they're sensing the blood glucose level. If the blood glucose level goes too high, then what is our response? Well, the beta cells are going to secrete insulin. So what does the insulin do? Insulin is going to hit insulin receptors on your cells. It's going to open up these glucose transports, and glucose is going to start coming into the cell. Let's say it goes too low. So if it goes too low, so this would be our stimulus. What's going to happen? We're going to release something called glucagon. And what glucagon is going to do is it's going to trigger the liver to break down glycogen into glucose and then release that into the cells. And so we got this great feedback loop, which is going to keep our blood glucose levels perfect. Why is it important that we keep our blood glucose levels perfect? It's because glucose is the fuel. And if we can't get that fuel to our cells, if we use too much of it too quickly, then we're out of luck. So the whole thing is built on this feedback loop where we constantly are keeping ourselves close to that system as far as blood glucose level. But remember, the whole thing, let's find a different color, is tied around these organs in the middle, so the receptors and the effectors, and then the stimulus and the response. And so when you ever see one of these figure 8 diagrams in a book or anywhere, always be thinking.
Yeah, I should still be recording. Oh, you did stop it. Oh. Don't worry about it. Sorry. No worries.
All right, any questions about that? So you need to know, for me, for life, as a paramedic, you need to know the feedback. You know how to you know the difference between the two of them and what the curves are about that. Yeah.
So does positive feedback work like the same kind of?
Yes, yeah. Same way, but it's completely opposite in terms of what it's trying to function, what it's trying to accomplish. But same organs, same thing, uses the body, everything else like that. Okay. When we talked about it earlier, when homeostasis regulation fails, organ systems will malfunction. Disease results, symptoms are present. I got it. All right, let's talk a little bit about language of anatomy. Surface anatomy and sectional anatomy. So surface anatomy is anatomical landmarks, anatomical regions, and anatomical directions for the country. We talk about anatomical landmarks. We're talking about the perfect anatomical position is this. Hands are on the side, palms are forward, legs are slightly apart, facing straight up. Okay. So the idea that in that anatomical landmark, why does that matter to you? So what? Why does it matter to you?
Accurately identifying parts of the body.
That's it right there. The idea that you as a paramedic, the idea that you can identify no matter what it is or how it is, you can identify exactly what it needs to be. So tell me then, tell me where my liver is at. Don't point. What is that? Upper right quadrant, right? So while it's opposite from you, it's still always going to be my right upper quadrant, always, always, always. Same thing with the rest of the body parts along the way. Supine, as you should know, is face up. Prone is face down. So when we talk about anatomical regions, what they're showing here is the abdomen. So obviously the 4 different quadrants, but it's further broken down in terms of different regions within those quadrants as well. And so the idea that out of that, you can identify where different organs are along the way. So as we talk about direction, you're going to need to know this, okay? So when we talk about distal versus proximal, what's the difference and how do you remember it? Distance is something away, right? Proximate or proximal is closer to, always, always. So in relationship to, are they distal or are they proximal? We're going to talk about superior or inferior. We're going to break these down in terms of different planes. We're going to talk about cranial versus caudal, a way to remember that. We're going to talk about dorsal or posterior versus ventral and anterior. When we talk about lateral versus medial, medial versus medium line, lateral being to the side or away from. All right, you need to know this. 3 primary planes: transverse, frontal, also known as coronal, and sagittal. Talk about transverse. The way of remembering about transverse is trans is across something. Trans is always going to be across. So transverse is used very, very frequently in terms of cutting planes for CAT scan, for MRIs. Very, very common in terms of how it's broken down and sliced up and everything like that. So the terminology for transverse then is what? What goes along with transverse? It's 2 different terms. Superior and inferior, right? Okay. Coronal divides it how? So anterior, posterior, it's going to slice me right down the middle this way. So I've got anterior and I've got posterior. Sagittal then is going to slice me right down the middle. Whoop, right here. And so terminology to the left and to the right. Away from to midline and away from midline. A cut that divides the body into the left and right half is a mid-sagittal section. That is right straight down the middle. Okay? So you can have different slices in terms of here and in terms of here. That is a wee bit of the different terminology. I want to go back for just a second. I want to talk just a couple of things more. You should know that with transverse, the other way of explaining superior and inferior is cranial versus caudal. A cranial, no big deal, different towards the head, right? What's caudal? What's a way to remember about caudal? Towards the tail, yes, but okay. What else? There's caudal anesthesia. When they put a spinal in your back, where do they put it at? Bang, right there, right? So caudal is towards the bottom. So, cranial towards the top, caudal towards the bottom. Coronal, anterior, posterior. You should also know that they're called ventral versus dorsal. Dorsal towards the tail always. Sagittal, medial and lateral. You should know that terminology. Not left, not right. I know that it has it up there in the slide, but you should know that represent medial versus lateral. Questions to that? Yep.
So when you're talking about cranial and caudal, are they talking just from the head? But
yes.
Okay.
Well, it isn't necessarily just to the butt, but the way remembering in your brain is one is always towards
I was more referring to that superior and inferior, which was only
right. And this is exactly the same way.
So it's the same.
But the example that I gave you is just a reminder that caudal is going to be down.
Okay.
That's all it is. So body cavities protect delicate organs, permit significant changes in size and shape of internal organs. When we talk about serous membrane, we're talking about a lining. We're talking about our organs being washed in this serous fluid, if you will. The good news is that it permits movement of reducing friction. So when we have pleurisy, what's the reason for pleurisy? Respiratory therapist, what's the reason for pleurisy? So it's a friction type thing, right? Yeah. So the idea in terms of serous fluid will wash within the organs. When it doesn't, then there's going to be the disease process that kicks in. So the difference between a visceral layer, covers the organs, versus a parietal layer, which lines the inner surface of the body wall. So the idea in terms of our lungs have both. Covers covers the lungs, but also parietal layer in terms of covering the inside of the lungs itself. When we talk about a pericardial cavity, we're talking about lies within the mediastinum. We're talking about a pair of pleural cavities, each surrounding a lung. Ventral body cavity appears early embryonic development. It takes place in the first trimester of development, usually within about the first 2 or 3 weeks. It includes all organs from the respiratory system to the reproductive system. Divides during development. So when baby first comes into gestation or development along the way, this is entirely all complete. And then over a period of time, as gestational age goes on, it starts dividing in terms of thorax versus abdomen versus reproduction system. When we talk about abdominal pelvic cavity, we're talking about peritoneal fluid. And later in life, as we get into trauma, as we get into GU problems, we're going to be spending a bunch of time talking about peritonitis. And so the idea of this becomes inflamed either because of bleeding, trauma, or because of disease problems. All right, so questions to that? You good? You okay? All right, one last thing. It's not part of your book, but something that I threw in. I threw in is specific to your class, not because of anything about your class, but something that I want to start doing. It's something that I have been wanting to do for a number of classes, you just haven't got there. That is that just a wee bit about medical terminology. And I get the idea that you took an online program to get here. And I get the idea that you kind of choose that. And I get the idea that you've been doing it in the field for a period of time. Okay? But the idea that kind of going along with anatomy physiology, sometimes we get pretty stuck in terms of what comes out of our mouth. And so this is just a real quick, down and dirty type of thing towards medical terminology. And let's see if we'll play.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Payment Box channel. Today I want to talk about how to approach medical terminology. What I like to call breaking up, which isn't hard to do. So the key, of course, is to take very complicated problems and break them down into small, more manageable pieces. This is the 4 languages.
That's all right. I'm going to press without it. What I will give you is a handout. And on the handout is just some of the root words and prefixes and suffixes. Now, it's not complete, but it's just part of some things that you should know along the way. At the very bottom of that handout, there is a couple different videos you can take a look at. This being one of them. There's another one that helps as well. And the idea is you don't have to know every single root word or prefix or suffix along the way, but you need to have a decent language in terms of being able to figure out words along the way. Does that make sense? And so to them, one of the things now, and as far as making part of this chapter, is just to get you oriented in terms of starting to talk as a medical professional. And maybe you have that, but the idea in terms of enhancing it along the way. Make sense? That was actually the last slide in that presentation. Any questions on anything we talked about? So what do you need to know?
Feedback loops.
Yep.
Body plans.
Body part? I'm sorry, say it again.
Body plans.
Body plans, good. What else?
Feedback loops.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So should you know a little bit in terms of medical terminology? We're going to probably take some questions in terms of medical terminology. Okay. You are not to talk too much about next Wednesday, but you're going to have diagrams you're going to have to label, okay? Not just for this, but for everything that we're doing for the next week. Okay? Questions at all? Now we're ready. I'm back in about 5 minutes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Pretty much.
So I went for another video, and it didn't play it.
So it's not pulling them up in here. Where are the videos at?
YouTube. But for example, this. It's there, and that's what you see on the screen.
Yeah.
And you go to do this.
The Flash Embed videos are no longer supported, but you can still watch this video on YouTube.
It pulls it down from YouTube itself. So what you get then is the audio.
So now it's over here.
Right.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Payment Box channel. Today I want to talk about how to approach medical terminology. What I like to call breaking up, Okay. Which isn't.
So it would be the option of you'd have to throw it over there every time.
Right, which is not a problem, except that it's still only pulling up the audio and not the visuals.
The visuals right here.
I know, but it's not exactly that.
Right. It's because we have the two, so you'd have to do this with it. So you'd have to literally take this,
So I highly recommend that.
throw it over here.
So what'd you do?
So here's my mouse.
Yeah.
I grabbed this and I took it over to that screen. And then I'd have to look over here is the problem. Yeah, so and then back here, so this pops here. So because we have it as an extended slide, it pops it here instead of over there.
So what happens?
Go ahead.
So if you want to put it onto that projection, you'd have to go over here and take it over that screen. It's basically like having double screens. And then when you go back to your PowerPoint, there's your it's not loading your PowerPoint. Oh, there's your PowerPoint again. So now you're up over here and go to your next slides. So, but if you go to this, and you go over here to watch on YouTube, let's close those down. So tabs.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Payment Talk channel. Today I'm going to talk about how to.
So the only other way here is to take this and go over there. Or it would be then you'd lose the presenter mode and you'd have to go to this.
So
and then switch it so it's duplicated.
for my stuff, I'm good with that, but I don't know what that does to your recording.
Oh, it records only whatever's on that screen.
Okay.
So, which we're not recorded either. So again, we can duplicate it is the other aspect. If we get rid of presentation mode, we can do this. So, right here, and I can go duplicate.
It's
apply.
easy. Bill doesn't have enough this screen.
So I can keep these changes. So that's the other thing we can do.
The first like 2 months.
So now it's duplicated on here. But then if you do that, here's your so if I go here, then there's your area, but I'm trying to sync it, but then you lose all your pen. But if you do this, this is how you could rotate still through. Then if you click on this here, there it's built in. So now it's on the screen.
So right now, I'm getting this figured out.
Yeah. So then you're duplicated.
So we can come on to that.
Okay, so you're done with this one?
Yep.
Let's keep clicking off all those. And then which one do you want? So then you're up here. So here you'll basically be there.
So this, I should be able to just draw on the videos as I come to.
Oh,
yeah, it was.
Say it one more time. There's a lot of back there. Scan, that'll get you out. You just click right here.
When you go to
home.
So I'm going to try one more thing before you get started, but I'll get you all set up and it shouldn't work at all. I mean, it should work perfect.
Okay, guys, put it on. Out of here.